Hare Krishna. I welcome all of you to this Weekend Wisdom series. We are continuing our discussion on chapter 5 of Bhagavad Gita. The name of the chapter is Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. This chapter in total has 29 shlokas, and we are expected to finish this chapter in 3 sessions. Today we will be covering shloka 1 to 11. In this chapter, Arjuna has raised an interesting question before Krishna. So, Arjuna is still confused with different set of instructions being given by Krishna in the previous chapters. On one side, Krishna is talking about renunciation or sannyas, and on the other side, Krishna is talking about karma yoga or action with devotion. So here, Arjuna is asking a very relevant question from Krishna, and he's asking that which of these two options, the renunciation or the sannyas, or work with devotion or karma yoga, please help me to understand which of these two options are better. Sometimes a disciple gets confused with the different set of instructions being given by the spiritual master, and he cannot decide which option he should exercise and which option he should reject. So Arjuna raised this query. So this is called as pari-prashnena. Whenever we have a doubt, we should seek right guidance so that we can pursue on our path with consistency, with a proper understanding. So Arjuna asked this question from Krishna in shloka 1, what he should do, what is the best option for him to exercise. And then from shloka 2 onwards, Krishna is answering to this very question of Arjuna. Om jnanatimirandhasya jnananjala shalakaya chakshur militam yena tasmai shri gurve namah. So Krishna tells to Arjuna in shloka 2 that work in devotional service or karma yoga is always better than renunciation of work. Now, renunciation of work means sannyas, and we need to have a proper understanding of this term sannyas before we get into further discussion. So in today's society, we see a lot of people, they accept saffron drops and they renounce everything from this world. So sannyas just does not mean that one simply change the dress or leave the family and he becomes a sannyasi. That's not the real definition of a sannyasi. The word sannyas, again, it is a Sanskrit word, and it is basically, it can be divided in two parts, sat and nyas. Sat means eternity and nyas means renunciation. So one who renounces everything for the sake of Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is a sannyasi. Now here Krishna is giving this clear indication to Arjuna that just going for sannyas is not a good option. You should focus on karma yoga because Krishna was aware what is going to happen in the society in future. So when he is speaking on Bhagavad Gita, he is thinking everything. He is thinking about the future also. He can predict the future, and he was aware that in society in future people will not use this sannyas designation properly, because in sannyas ashram there are so many rules and regulations that one is expected to follow. But in today's society, it is very, very difficult for people to follow the rules and regulations of sannyasa ashram. That is why he gave an option to Arjuna that it is always preferable. He's telling that devotional service or the work in devotional service is better than a mere renunciation. So now we talked about this sannyas or renunciation, and we just let's briefly focus on Karma Yoga now. So what is the meaning of Karma Yoga? So the meaning of Karma Yoga is when one simply works for Krishna. Now this has a lot of practical implications in it. One may think how one can simply work for Krishna in today's world. We are so much busy in our day-to-day life. So in fact, this chapter is very practical because the name is Action in Krishna Consciousness. We are not talking about renunciation here. Krishna is not advising Arjuna about renunciation. Krishna is talking about work and how that work has to be done, that we will be discussing going forward. So the first clarification that came from Krishna to Arjuna is that Karma Yoga or action with devotion is better than mere renunciation. This is the first message that we can learn in today's session. Now, what is Karma Yoga? When whatever we do in our day-to-day life, we do it with the understanding, with the mentality or with the consciousness that ultimately it is meant to serve Krishna. And there has to be some practical action, or our day-to-day life should be molded in a manner that it reflects the attitude that yes, our actions are being performed in a manner that it is meant to serve Krishna. So for example, if we eat, so why do we eat? So we eat to maintain our body. If we will not eat on a regular basis, one day we'll die. So eating is necessary part of life. We cannot skip eating. Sleep is necessary so that our mind can get proper rest, and once our mind gets proper rest, then we can do proper sadhana. We can focus on chanting of holy names of the Lord. We can perform our day-to-day duties nicely. But if we do not sleep properly, we cannot do it. Then doing some sort of exercises, yoga, and doing regular day-to-day work. Probably it is job or maybe business or our profession or just maintaining household affairs. All these things can be connected to Krishna, provided we know the art how it has to be connected. So all these requires a proper set of consciousness, and there is some training that needs to be given to the consciousness so that we can actually perform all the actions that are necessary for us to perform, to live within this world. And in parallel, we can cultivate our loving relationship with God. And that is the very purpose of human existence. In Shloka 3, now Lord Krishna is talking about the qualities of a person who is performing the action on the platform of devotion. So first is Yona dvesti na kankshati. That means the one who does not hate, nor does he desire. So he does not hate with anyone, and he don't desire anything for himself, for his own personal benefit. Ultimately, whatever he desires it for the sake of giving more and more satisfaction to Krishna. But in this whole world that we see today, most of the people either desire for themselves or people desire for their family. So desiring for self or desiring for family may follow, but the most important is how much we really desire for God. That's most important. So he doesn't desire means he desires for ultimately Krishna but not for self. And the second word that's being used here in Shloka 3 is nirdvando. That means free from duality. So how can one get free from dualities? Duality means when we look at the extreme situations of this world on two different tangents. Too much hot, too much cold. Day, night. So two different extremes when we observe, when we see in this world, when we experience in this world, how do we look at them? So once we learn the art of seeing everything in relationship with Krishna, then we can be nirdvando. That means we can be free from the dualities of this world. So this is the theme of Shloka 2 and 3, when Krishna is advising to Arjuna what is the best option for him to exercise. He can basically focus on Karma Yoga rather than mere renunciation. And that is the advice ultimately coming in from the message of Bhagavad Gita. Now we are moving to Shloka 4 and Shloka 5. So Shloka 4 and Shloka 5. Again, Krishna is talking there about Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. So let us first understand what is the meaning of the term Sankhya Yoga. So in essence, or in real terms, there is no difference between Karma Yoga, as we have already discussed about Karma Yoga, and now we'll be briefly talking about what is Sankhya Yoga. So there is no difference between Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga. In essence, both of them are same. So what is the meaning of Sankhya Yoga? So Sankhya Yoga means analytical study of this material world by dividing it into 24 different elements. Now we know that material world independently doesn't have any existence of its own. Material world works by a spiritual force behind it. Material world cannot work on its own. If we truly want to understand the nature of this material world, then we also need to understand the spiritual force behind it. And ultimately, the aim of both processes is to understand the absolute truth. Through devotion also, ultimately, we aim to understand absolute truth. And even through Sankhya Yoga, ultimately, one has to approach to understand the absolute truth, because material world, the different elements of material worlds can be understood in proper harmony only when we connect all those material elements with the spiritual source behind it. And the real spiritual source behind it is the absolute truth or God himself. Okay, so this is the theme of Shloka 4 and 5, when Krishna is telling Arjuna that again there is no difference between Karma Yoga and Sankhya Yoga, because ultimate aim of Sankhya Yoga is also to understand Krishna, to understand God. Otherwise we will not be able to have a complete realization or the meaning of this Sankhya Yoga process. Now we are going into the more practical insights of this chapter, starting from Shloka 6 to 11 that we'll be discussing now. And the theme of this part that we are going to discuss further is Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya, we were talking about Vairagya or mere renunciation, that people generally renounce everything. Now we are talking about Yukta Vairagya. And what is the meaning of Yukta Vairagya? We will discuss it now. So in Shloka 6, there is a term being used, Yoga Yukta Muni. When we talk about Muni, who is a Muni? The Muni is a person who is always thoughtful. He just do not take any decisions whimsically. He thinks through and then he takes the decision. So a Muni is a person who is always thoughtful about God, about Krishna. And then what he do on a practical level? He sees everything in relationship with Krishna. And that's why when it comes to even this material world, he do not renounce this material world. He even look at this material world in relationship with Krishna. So we do not have to renounce the objects that we have in our possession. We don't need to renounce our day-to-day activities. We just need to engage them, or we just need to dovetail them in a manner that ultimately it helps us in cultivating our consciousness to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So what does it do ultimately? What is the outcome? So the outcome is we do not engage, we do not renounce, but we engage the objects in the service of Lord Krishna. So, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandha Yukta Vairagyam Uchyate. And this is called a Yukta Vairagya. This is the perfection of Yukta Vairagya, that we do not have any attachment to the objects of this material world, but we take those objects to engage them in the service of Krishna. Maybe if we have a nice car, no problem in having the nice car, but if we use that in service, if we, let's say for example, visit to the temple by using the car, if we take the car and participate in the program, we visit and join the program, so we use these possessions in the service of Lord, then there is no prohibition or there is no restriction. So let's continue to discuss the qualities of people who or devotees who work on the platform of Yukta Vairagya. So Shloka 7 talks about some of those qualities. One is Vishuddhatma and the other is Vijitatma. So when we say Vishuddhatma, or a pure soul who looks at every object of this material world in relationship to Krishna, and he understands and he lives with this thought that everything belongs to Krishna, and even my life belongs to Krishna, the body belongs to Krishna, the mind belongs to Krishna, and all of these objects should be utilized in the service of Krishna. And Vijitatma. The word Vijitatma means a devotee is practicing Krishna consciousness, and by the practice of Krishna consciousness, he becomes Vijitatma. Vijitatma means the one who has conquered his mind as well as senses, or the one who has a control over the mind and senses. Because there are so many different objects in this world, our senses gets attracted to those objects, our mind gets attracted to those objects. And if we have a control over them, then we are safe in this world. And then we become free from the contamination of this material world. Now let us look at Shloka 10 and 11 that talks about the art, how to be free from the contamination of this material world. In Shloka 10, Lord Krishna is using an interesting analogy, and he's giving an example of the lotus flower. The lotus flower is there in the water pond, but the leaves of that lotus are unaffected by the water. Even if you put a drop of water on the leaves, still the water does not stay on those leaves. That drop cannot stay on that leaf, because the lotus maintains its own purity and its own quality. It does not get impacted by the water. Likewise, the people who are practicing Krishna consciousness, they have nothing to do with the upheavals of this material world or the contaminations of this material world. So they become free from it. Now, if you look at Shloka 10, in Shloka 10 there is an interesting word being used by Krishna, Lipyate na se papena. So let's say there is a pandemic at a global level, and if someone has been given an antiseptic vaccine against that disease, then he is not affected by whatever is happening in terms of that disease at a global level. He is completely aloof from that disease. He is not getting disturbed because he has been vaccinated. Likewise, this Krishna consciousness, the process of Krishna consciousness is like a vaccine. So we all need to have that vaccine to get free from these problems of this material world. And that's the best and the safest vaccine, and it does not have any side effects. It keeps on getting us cured day by day. The more we take it, the more we get cured. And the more we get cured, the more we become free from the dualities of this world, the more we become from this tendency of hating people in this world, the more we become free from unwanted desires of this world. So we have different contaminations in this world in the form of Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mad and Matsarya. So lust, anger, envy, greed, pride, envy and illusion. And we can get rid of it if we properly execute the process of Krishna consciousness. Now in Shloka 11, again the same concept Krishna is emphasizing, that if we are strongly engaged in Krishna consciousness activities, then our work, the work that we perform, it does not have any contamination with this material world. We may have different things to do in our day-to-day life, we may have different responsibilities to perform, but we do not get impacted. We continue to perform those activities, and in parallel we continue to build our relationship with God. And that is what the Yukta Vairagya is all about. Not renouncing anything, but engaging everything to the extent possible by dovetailing our consciousness to the platform of Krishna consciousness. So today in this session we discussed the question that was raised by Arjuna, whether he should, what is the best to be practiced, whether it is Karma Yoga or action in devotion, or it is renunciation or the Sannyasa Yoga. Then Krishna mentioned to Arjuna that out of these two, the best proposition is to go for Karma Yoga or action in devotion. He gave a very practical, logical perspective why Arjuna should opt for action in devotion. Then he also talked about the difference, the essence of Karma Yoga or the action in Krishna consciousness and Sankhya Yoga. Ultimately, the essence of both the practices are same. And then beginning from 6 to 11, he focused on the concept of Yukta Vairagya, attachment to Krishna and using all the objects in the service of Krishna, detachment to the extent that if any of the objects of this material world diverts our attention to the proper practice of Krishna consciousness. So with this, I thank all of you for joining today's session, and we look forward to have our next discussion beginning from the next session, and we'll begin from Shloka 12 of chapter 5. So I request all of you to please read Bhagavad Gita at your home so that we can continue the momentum, and we hopefully will be able to finish this theme of Bhagavad Gita very soon, and we will apply it in our day-to-day life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.